Witajcie w rozmowach logistyków. Nazywam się Piotr Skobało. Poprzez ten podcast chcę Wam pomóc szybciej i efektywniej budować biznes. Podcast nagrywamy dzięki sponsorom. Partnerami dzisiejszego odcinka są Magna Valley, firma doradcza oferująca usługi optymalizacji łańcucha dostaw i logistyki. Tworzymy rozwiązania redukujące koszty i efektywnie skalujące operacje. Budujemy wartość Waszego biznesu. Europa Systems, producent i integrator automatyki dla logistyki i produkcji. Ponad 25 lat doświadczenia zdobytego w setkach projektów w 35 krajach. Czy jesteście gotowi na dawkę praktycznej wiedzy? Mam nadzieję, że tak, bo zaczynamy nowy odcinek. Hello everyone, welcome to Logistics Conversations, also known as Rozmowy Logistyków. Today's episode is special for two reasons. First, it will be recorded in English, and second, we have a distinguished guest joining us for part 2 of our conversation. We are honored to welcome back Jim Tompkins. For those who didn't listen to our first part, Jim holds a PhD in industrial engineering from Purdue University. Over his many decades of career, Jim has founded 15 businesses that have generated over $2 billion in global revenue. He is also an accomplished author, having written or contributed to 30 books, including 3 focused on leadership. Additionally, Jim has delivered over 2,000 conference and keynote presentations and served as CEO of 10 businesses. Welcome back, Jim. Great to have you back.
Thank you, Peter. Good to be here.
So today, in this part or in this episode, we'll focus more on your current activity and our current activity as well, so Tompkins Ventures. And before we dig in, what would you say are the biggest challenges that you see in global logistics today?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is a result of all the sourcing activity that's changing. And so there's companies that are looking at more sustainable sourcing, which is resulting in some different answers. Particularly that's true in Europe, and my hat's off to Europe. They're doing the right thing there. There's companies that are looking at friendly shoring and saying, you know, we're not going to keep working with companies that are located in foreign countries that are not of the same political persuasion we are. And there's also people looking at nearshoring. The reason this is what I would mention with respect to what's occurring that's really upsetting the apple cart is when you change the sourcing, and by definition, the supply chain you had previously is obsolete. You're not going to use the same transportation providers. You're not going to use the same 3PLs. And so it's going to alter the entire supply chain, and you're going to have to redesign the supply chain. Now, maybe you can still use the same technology you've always used, but you're going to be physically, the handling of the material is going to be done by different people in different locations, and therefore there's a lot of different activities that are taking place. And so it's the amount of change that's going on that is really causing us to really study hard and work hard at making sure that our supply chain is a competitive advantage for the company.
And having said that, so let's try to explain to our listeners what is Tompkins Ventures and how it tries to address, say, all of these topics and challenges that, let's say, companies face in today's environment.
Well, contrary to the firm where I worked for 40 years, Tompkins International, which is a consulting and implementation firm, I realized that there was a real challenge with the people dealing with the right providers. And what I had done over my 40-year career, I met a lot of people, and that there wasn't a need for a major study necessarily, but there was an opportunity to really bring innovation into the organization by just working with the right partners. And so what I've done is I've gone from being a consultant to being a matchmaker. And Tompkins Ventures is a matchmaker where a client comes to a business partner and says, I have a problem, or I'm in need of innovation in these areas. This is what I'm trying to accomplish. This is my strategy. This is what I want the organization to do. Can you help us find someone that can provide that input to us? And so what we do is we understand the specific circumstance, and then we say, okay, who are the best people to work with these people? And we have 3 categories. We have commercial partners, we have capital partners, and we have consulting partners. The commercial partners are people that do transportation, that do 3PL, they do technology, they build buildings, they help companies improve their ability to perform. So they are folks that are selling products and services to clients. And so if it's a commercial partner, what we will do is we will look at our wealth of partners throughout the world and say, who are the right partners to help this client? We then take that partner, we match them with the client. The partner will develop the proposal. They will then provide that proposal to the client free of charge. And then the client has a choice of saying yes or no. Is this in our best interest of doing that? If the answer is yes, then they buy the service from the client, from the commercial partner. The commercial partner pays us a small success fee. That success fee is for us basically finding the opportunity for them. It's not added on to the cost of the service. It's actually subtracted from the service because they don't have to have all the sales and marketing people doing that work, and we get paid the success fee. We give half of our success fee to the business partner, the other half we keep ourselves. And now the client has the opportunity to have better transportation, to have better 3PL at a lower cost and providing better service. And so it really works well. The second CP, commercial partner, then capital partner, is people that want to invest in companies, be it capital or be it a loan. They want to invest in company and companies who need capital. And so what we do is we play matchmaker. We say, okay, here's a client that needs money. Here's somebody who wants to provide money. How can we put them together in a way that's going to allow them both to prosper? So it's a win-win on both sides. Once again, the commercial partner, the capital partner will pay us a small fee. We will split that fee between the business partner and ourselves, and the client gets the capital they need at the lowest possible cost. The third type of engagement is when we do use consulting partners. And here, what we want to do is make sure we use the consultant that is really, really, really an expert in that topic. And so we have consulting partners that have a specific geography, a specific industry, and a specific expertise within the supply chain. And what we do is we look at the client's need, the consultants' opportunities to provide that service. We match them up, and that allows them then to be successful working with that consultant. So what we learned is that there's a real problem with the large consulting organizations because they got this large overhead of people that are on the payroll that are not really producing any value for people. And so what we said is, okay, we're not going to have anyone on the payroll. We've got a total of 3 people on the payroll at Tompkins Ventures. Our overhead is less than $500,000 a year, but through our now 170 business partners and our thousands of commercial capital and consulting partners, we have developed an ecosystem that allows for no overhead to have more capability than McKinsey, Accenture, and IBM combined. And so it's really a superior solution to allow helping clients solve problems and become more innovative. And we do it through matchmaking. So it's a different type of model.
Yeah,
It's a model that. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's I was waiting for you to finish, but also for, let's say, from my perspective, being only 20 years, but still, this is, let's say, a model which I didn't see with my eyes in terms of the complexity of the solutions. And also we'll get to that in the moment. It's great that you have explained this, let's say, structure of how you can connect. But looking, let's say, also from my perspective, it's that in reality I can call you guys with almost any topic related to supply chain in a sense. If it's a solution, if it's a question, so I need a consultant, or I have some question or some, let's say, try to understand how to do something. And also even capital topics, which is also rare, because even you can find logistic operators who have some consulting capacities, let's say better or worse, maybe a bad wording, more or less advanced in this sense, but also capital is something which is rare in this combination.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's fun to do because you're really helping people, helping companies, and that's a good thing to do. It's good to do good. It really makes you feel good.
And this is great, but what is also, let's say, in my perspective, adds value is that you can the customer will approach you. I need some transport from A to B, and he after a meeting, it can come out that he doesn't need that he needs a completely different topic in order to address this, let's say, strategic topic that he needs to have addressed in a sense. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is interesting that oftentimes they'll point you at the wrong bullseye, and you need to have that experience to say, "Well, have you thought about this? And how would this be helpful?" And that's rewarding. I mentioned do good by doing good. Here's an example. There's a company that Tompkins Ventures work with called Task for Pros, and Task for Pros is in Europe, it's in North America, and it's in South America. In the south of Brazil, there was these terrible floods. In the state that these floods came, there's 500 cities, and 450 of those cities were underwater. And so our partner Task for Pros, what they decided to do is donate some labor to help them unload trucks and put the medical supplies, the water, and the food on boats. And where you had to do that loading or unloading depended on how much it was raining that day and how high the waters were.
Yeah.
And so the spots where you could load changed. And so they donated, I don't know, 4 weeks, 100 people to do this project, and they didn't want to get a big publicity thing going on it or anything, and so they just donated the 400 people, 400 man weeks, and we're trying to help out. Well, they're in this one particular location, and they're unloading trucks and loading stuff on the boats, and this executive comes up that owned a local grocery store, and he looked at the people and he said, "You people volunteers?" They said, "No, no, we're paid to be here. Our company is paying for our time. So we're being paid. We're not volunteers, but our company is volunteering." And he said, "Wow, what's the name of the company?" He said, "Task for Pros." He said, "What do you do?" They said, "Well, we provide labor for logistics and warehousing activity on an on demand basis." He said, "Wow, that's really interesting. Do you work with any grocery store chains?" And they said, "Well, yeah, we do. We work all the time unloading product in the grocery stores and bringing it in the store and putting it on the shelf." And he said, "Well, give me the name of the guy that runs your company." So they gave him the name of the CEO. They called the CEO, and he said, "We'd like to come and have you bid on doing some of our work because we have problem with that on-demand labor." And so they came and they wound up getting a project that's worth, I don't know, $600,000. And so here they volunteered to help, and that volunteering resulted in them getting a $600,000 client.
Comes back.
And
Yeah, it
it's so
comes back.
cool. It's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great, really. And can you tell us, can we, let's say, get into more details about the, let's say, the main practices that you focus on, and can we tell our listeners a little bit about that?
So there's four basic practices. They have grown in scope over time. Our largest practice, based on number of projects, is in logistics. Logistics includes all global transportation. So this could be domestic within Poland, or it could be from Poland to New Jersey. It could be ocean, it could be air, it could be rail, it could be truckload, it could be less than truckload, it could be final mile. We also work in the 3PL sector. And so we have people that have cold and ambient warehouses where they are providing third party logistics, and we can match folks up from there. Just today, I got a call from Indonesia, and they say, "My client in Vietnam needs a new 3PL in New Jersey." And so we're now in the process of looking at all of our partners in New Jersey that are 3PLs and where they have space. Also, in logistics, we do deal with real estate. Sometimes clients say we need to rent a building. Sometimes they say we need to develop a building. So we work with developers, people that are building facilities. We work with companies that provide material handling systems within those warehouses. And so we're working with a very a strong firm, as you know, Peter, from Poland, that gives us great capability to do automation within factories, within warehouses for Europe, and really great opportunity. So logistics covers almost everything that you would think, from buildings to material handling equipment to labor to third party logistics and transportation. Now, one area I didn't mention there, and some people can say, oh, they left out technology. Well, we did leave technology out of logistics. That's because technology is a subject unto itself.
Okay,
And
okay.
on our subject of technology, we go all the way from a warehouse management system or transportation management or labor management system all the way up to a total digitized enabled economy or a digitized enabled supply chain. And so we cover the span. If it has anything about moving product around the world, we handle that, be it in a warehouse or in transportation or in procurement or whatever aspect there is of the business. Um, and so we have, I mentioned procurement. We have procurement practice within our logistics as well. So logistics, not only procurement of logistics services, but the overall topic of procurement
Oh,
fits within
procurement. Yeah,
our
yeah, yeah.
logistics. Yep, that's a big deal. The third practice that we have is the one we call entrepreneurial growth, and it has to do with matching up clients. When we started, we were helping mergers and acquisitions, where companies were interested in getting an investment from a private equity, a venture capital, or angel investor, and so we do that and we support that process. We get the right companies with the right investors. But something else we've found along the way is oftentimes a company would come to us and say, we need to raise capital. Well, as we evaluated their needs, they really didn't need capital. What they needed was cash flow. And so we looked at what are alternative ways of providing cash flow. I mean, if you're going to get capital in the company, you're going to give up equity. And I hate to see entrepreneurs give up equity unless they need to. And so what we're looking and finding ways of providing them loans or some form of supply chain finance that allows them to fund the company, fund the growth of the company without giving up equity. And so that's a portion of our entrepreneurial
Yeah,
growth
I think this
practice.
is worth, let's say, mentioning that this is not only the way how to, let's say, sell some part of the companies, that some companies coming to you and you need to sell, I don't know, 20-30% of your company, but there are different ways in order to make things work and, let's say, maintain this, let's say, ownership and so on and so on. So also, let's say, from my perspective, this is really interesting topic.
Well, I find, I've been an entrepreneur for close to 50 years. And for the first 47 of that, the only way I knew about getting money was by selling a piece of your company. And that's absolutely not right. That's not the right approach to it. So you're absolutely right. Oftentimes, entrepreneurs don't have this knowledge and background. And we're helping companies in all sorts of environments and all sorts of regions of the world raise capital without giving up equity by using oftentimes supply chain finance or loans in some way. And so, yeah, very useful practice, one that's very eye opening for a lot of folks. And then the last practice of our four is leadership. And leadership is helping companies make sure they have the right people in the right jobs doing the right things. And what we find sometimes you've got round pegs and square holes, and it's just you got the wrong people. Or sometimes you have the right people, but you have the wrong processes. Or sometimes you got the right people and the right processes, but the wrong strategy. Or sometimes you got the right people and the right processes and the right strategy, but you don't have the right development plan for innovation. And so, what are the needs of this company? And this is especially difficult now because people have changed. COVID's had a change on people. We've always talked about life work balance, but be honest, we didn't really believe that. I mean, when I was coming along, you talk about how important the family was and you're dedicated. Of course, you love your wife and you love your kids
Yeah,
and so
but
forth.
you need to
But
spend
then
14 hours at work anyhow.
yeah, yeah. Well, the boss says, "Hey, here's a $500 a year raise." We say, "Hey, I want to do that." But nowadays, I think the young people, in particular, they're so much smarter than we were, and they're really looking at what's the most important thing for me to do today. Is it to make another $500, or is it to go to my son's ball game? Is it to go to my daughter's soccer game? And so I think that's really intelligent. The problem we have with that is some of the bosses don't get it because that's not how they thought. say they don't get this. They don't get the work from home thing. They say, why work from home when you should come to work? And guess what? We'll give you free coffee and donuts. Yeah, you spend 2 hours a day commuting just so you get a cup of coffee and a donut. Plus, the donut was not good for you anyway. So you kind of go, oh wow. So I think leadership is a real challenge because we got some cultural differences out there, and there's a mismatch between people wanting to work for the old style command and control type boss. Instead, they want to deal with the let's communicate and have trust type of boss. And so that's changing companies and how they operate. So leadership's a big deal.
Yeah, so I concur. I agree with that completely. We're discussing also it more closely in our first part. So if listeners didn't hear our first, let's say, part of this interview, then we're encouraging to also listen to that one. Perfect. So Jim, how can a customer approach Tompkins Ventures? Just to give like a straight, let's say, pointer on how to let's say to speak with you, speak with us in terms of let's say business opportunities and let's say the topics.
Well, the way 90% of the customers find us is they know someone who's a partner of Tompkins Ventures. And like I say, now we're up to 170. I can't believe we have 170 business partners in 41 countries. And so you can go on LinkedIn and search under Tompkins Ventures, and those partners will come up. Or possibly you know somebody in your community or your country that's a supply chain expert, and chances are good they're Tompkins Ventures business partners. But the best approach is to go to a business partner because a business partner is going to understand your issue, are going to be your shepherd, be your advocate for making sure that we do the absolute best job we can with the matchmaking. And the business partners are the ones that really it's the gasoline for the car. It's
Yeah,
what
so this is
keeps us
let's say
moving.
perfectly let's say since my next question would be so what is this role of the of the business partner? So exactly having said that, yeah.
Yeah, the role of the business partner is to be the advocate for the client, to make sure that the Tompkins Ventures structure understands what is these people's objectives. How can we really, really make them feel good? When we began, we thought we were going to be more problem solvers. Now, about 35% of the opportunities we have is to solve a problem. About 65% of the time is to help them be innovative. And so it's kind of evolved. I didn't think about that. Okay, well, it's what the problem the guy had, and the guy had a problem. He says, "Hey, my cost of transportation is too high. I need to reduce that." Well, we help them reduce transportation. But now what they're coming to us and they're saying, "We're not sure if we're really providing the customer service that's needed. What can we do that's going to be innovative?" Hopefully in also save money, but how can we do a better job of helping our clients? What are the things that we need to do to be more innovative? What is our use of AI? What is our use of technology? How can we become digitally enabled in a way that allows us to be successful? What are additional services or offerings that we could have that's going to allow our clients to say, boy, I really like working with these folks? And so it's now like 65% of our projects have to do with innovation and 35% have to do with cutting costs. So it's a interesting evolution how that switched over time. It was the reverse 4 years ago.
I think, let's say, speaking about this leadership and the thought leadership and let's say the role of the supply chain organization, I hope that this is also let's say one of the reasons that we are thinking in this way, not only cut the cost and consider us, meaning supply chain logistic as a only cost, let's say, line in the P&L, but also as the let's say innovative line that can bring value to the customer. So that's interesting. And how do you see the role of Europe in the organization? Because obviously you are from USA. Let's say the organization is the strongest in Americas, in Northern America and but Southern America as well. You can talk about it a little bit if you like. But how do you see the role of Europe in the organization?
Well, I think the relationship between North America, South America, and Europe is critical going forward. If we look at the number of people in the world, with India and China now having the most people in the world, they might want to claim some superiority over the rest of the world. However, I believe what we have is, and we can partner with India, partner with China if we do it carefully, but what we really have is a huge consumption. Let's face it, the wealth of the world is in the United States and in Europe. That's where the wealth of the world comes from. And if either one of us has isolationist tendencies, which unfortunately we get into from time to time, I think that's a mistake, because there's a comparative advantage that companies and organizations and countries have, where there's certain countries, because of their natural resources or because of their climate or because of the heritage in a field, really is best. And it's best that those countries specialize in what they're really good at. And then it's good that other countries specialize in what they're good at. And then they have free trade and we have open trade. And that's really important, because what that's going to do is that's going to raise the ships for all boats in the water. And so I think it allows us all to increase our standard of living. If you go back to the early days, here we had Peter living in Poland 1,000 years ago, and we had Jim living in the United States 1,000 years ago, and we lived on a farm. We did our own agriculture. We did our own livestock. We made our own clothes. We made all our own tools. In some cases, we even made our own steel, and so we were an independent world unto ourselves. Well, then we found out, gee, Peter really did better at doing the farming, and Jim really did better at the livestock. And so Peter became a farmer, and Jim became a cattle rancher. And then what we did is we traded, and both of our standard of living went up. And that increased. You look at the Mediterranean Sea, we're finding ships in the Mediterranean Sea that sunk 1,500 years ago. And in that ship that was sunk, there's product from
Yeah, from
Poland,
different.
there's
Yeah,
product from France, there's product from Egypt, and product from, as far away as India. And that was the trade route of the world. Well, now the world is much larger, and it's now trade routes all the way from the Atlantic to the Pacific to all the ocean, and if we all work together, and the significant free countries of the world work together, there's no power that's ever going to beat us, because we will have comparative advantage. So I think it's if we're looking at the sustainability issue, if you can't have one country that really cares about sustainability and another one that is blowing pollution in the air. We all have to work together on that. That's critically important. And so I think it's about, we all are a neighborhood, and maybe one country speaks a different language than another, but we all have to speak the business of business, and that allows us to all be successful. So Europe, to me, in addition to the fact that I love Europe, my wife and I are going on another trip. We're going to be in Europe starting June 5th. No, June 18th. June 18th, we're going to be all the way until July 5th. We're going to be back in Europe again. We love it. I mean, it's a great place to spend
and which
time. And
country? If
so,
I'm,
yeah, I mean,
which
I think
country, if I may ask? Italy or?
we are going. We're actually going to start not in Europe. We're going to start in Iceland, and then we go to Norway, and then we do Denmark. Then we're going to do Scotland, and then we're going to
Ah,
do
okay,
Ireland, and
perfect.
then we're going to go back to the UK. This is the real reason for this trip: is we go to Liverpool. I'm a Beatles fan. I've never been to Liverpool, so I'm going. We have a 8 hours tour. I'm going to be able to visit the shop where John Lennon first had
Yeah,
coffee, and the place that Paul McCartney first ate cereal. I'm going to go see them all, and I love that. That's fun. And then we go over to France, and then we're going to go back to Southampton and up to Heathrow and fly home. But we've done the Mediterranean, we've done the whole Baltic Sea, we've done the whole thing, and we just love it. And so it's always good to learn from different cultures and different people, and me personally, I love to just eat different food. I love to eat different
yeah,
food.
that's
Yeah,
perfect, and that's you get a lot here. So there is a lot of mix. Let's say, especially traveling from north
yeah,
down south, let's say to Italy or to Spain and so on and so on. That's great. And how do you see the, let's say, the growth of Tompkins Ventures also in Europe? Also, let's say, with this new development, with appointing new vice presidents of Europe. So, if you could, let's say, comment on that and tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I certainly can comment. On the accuracy of my comments, we need to call into question a little bit. When we started Tompkins Ventures, we thought it would be absolutely wonderful if we wound up with 15 partners. And then we were at 20 before we knew it, and then we were at 50, and then we were at 100, and today we're at 170. We now see, and we're planning on the systems and infrastructure to support 250 business partners in the world. We see that the number one in business partners would be United States, number two would be Europe. And so we see Europe as a huge region of growth for us because the business partners is related to the gross domestic product. The more business that's done there, the more supply chain is done, and therefore the more we need to be involved. So we see Europe growing very rapidly. We also see, I use the word United States and Europe in one sentence. Obviously, one is a country and the other is a continent. And so we see in Europe the need to work across those cultures. And so in Europe, we have a vice president from the UK, a vice president that has got some really strong experience in Poland. That's Peter. And we see that as really, just like in Latin America, we have three vice presidents for that part of the world. And so I believe if we take Malcolm's expertise and Peter's expertise, we've got the right foundation to really do a great job across Europe. And I'm really excited about them beginning this new role because it's going to really help us be more successful for more companies and more business partners in Europe. So I wouldn't be surprised if a year from now we didn't have 100 business partners in Europe. I said a year, I meant 3 years from now. 3 years from now, I think we'll have 100 business partners in Europe. Today we have 25. So it's gonna triple
Yeah, so
in
this was
volume and
exactly, let's
be
say,
equal
my
to the
my my
United States.
next question, and I think, let's say, we can also ask, let's say, the embarking on also on this mission together with Malcolm, and of course with let's say with your leadership. Maybe we can also, let's say, explain in a few sentences what would you need to be to become a business partner, or what roles or capabilities what we would be looking for. Maybe, let's say, some of our listeners would be interested in pursuing that.
So our business partners tend to have 20 years or more of diverse experience in supply chain. Interestingly, some of them took supply chain or engineering in school. Some of them took psychology and physics in school. So you can't look at the success of our business partners and trace it back to any field of study at the university, but you can trace it back to they've had 3 to 5 significant roles in supply chain, oftentimes starting out in transportation or procurement or in warehousing, but then having a career that advanced. And so they have a broad understanding and a deep understanding of supply chain. I'm really interested in the breadth of understanding because I'm not interested in solving a transportation problem and creating an inventory
Yeah,
problem,
yeah,
or
yeah.
solving an inventory problem and creating a
This
transportation problem. Yeah,
interconnectedness.
yeah, and you need that. It just takes time to get that established. So I'm looking for 20, 30-year folks that have that, but also people that have built a network of contacts over the years where they are known as people of their word. And so someone says, "Oh, yes, I know that guy. You can trust him. He says what he does and he does what he says." That's extremely important to us because we're going to be helping clients and we need to have them have confidence that we're going to produce for them and that they have trust in us. A third characteristic, which is a little bit different, is they don't need to be, quote, salesmen because we're not about selling. I care more about, what is your opinion about helping people? Have you done any, public service, or do you volunteer your kid's school, or do you coach soccer, or what type of are you a person that really cares about others and you want to make them more successful? That's what I think drives our most successful business partners are people that like to continue to stay active. They want to be in their own business as well. Some of them are full-time consultants and they do this as a sideline. That's marvelous. That's a great thing to do. Some of them still have full-time jobs, but they want to have a business that they can build that's their own. So it's a kind of a mix between experience, being a good person, and having a desire to help people. Those are the guys that really rise to the top, guys and
Okay,
gals.
perfect. So thanks for that. And let's say, speaking about, let's say, okay, as you mentioned, and our listeners probably know very well, let's say we're positioned in Central Eastern Europe, and with a lot of, let's say, things going on, in order to say it really, really politely. On a political level, we have war on our borders. We had a really, let's say, after COVID, we had a completely different story, and since 2 years, there is a major disruption let's say, in our, especially here, local environment. How do you see it from USA? So how do you see this situation? How the let's say the other parts of world see us in this position? Because we are speaking about this onshoring, we see a lot of ourselves, so the guys here see a lot of opportunities for our region. However, these are, in a sense, being a little bit slowed maybe from what's going on, and what is the perspective of the rest of the world.
Well, I think the whole thought process. Number one, if we're looking at being quality people and helping mankind, I mean, Poland wins that award. If you look at the number of people that have come across the border into Poland, and the Polish people have opened their homes and opened their hearts, and it's been just a thrill to see how Central Eastern Europe is kind of taking care of their own, if you will, given this terrible attack from Russia. So I think that's certainly worth tipping your hat on. If you also look at what I was saying earlier about competitive advantage, just like the United States gets tremendous competitive advantage by dealing with its partners in Canada and in Mexico, who have different specializations. Central Eastern Europe has some, Poland has huge advantages over the other countries in Central Europe from the point of view of labor costs, and it's a great place to quote nearshore into Germany and France and so forth. So I think there's different countries that specialize in different things, and that builds for a robust economy of the overall integrated whole. And so I see huge growth coming from the Central Eastern European countries and the innovation there. I find the people in that part of the world very, very innovative, very smart, and very aggressive. And so I think that's if you look at a lot of the really cool computer companies are coming from that region as well, and lots of innovation taking place. Spoke to a lady in Mexico last week, and I asked her what her life's goal was, and she said, "I want to get back to Croatia. That's where I was born. That's where I want to go." And I said, "Well, that's really really cool." She said, "Yeah, my mom and dad made it back. They were living in France, but now they've made it back, and so it takes time to get people back to where they should go." And the changing of the borders of Poland and the changing of what's going on in Ukraine. I would think it's an exciting time for people to get together and say, hey, how can we help? How can we make things better? And Tompkins Ventures is standing right there and
Yeah,
saying,
so
how can we help?
that's perfect. And also, let's say, from our perspective, I like those adjectives that you used. So innovative, but also aggressive. So let's say we are still hungry in a sense. Let's say comparing to even some parts of Western Europe, and but also the, let's say, this in a sense. historical perspective that we lost some time in terms of communism and so on and so on. In the last 3 decades, we managed to overcome and jump over different types of technologies and so on. So if you look at finance, we have much better solutions than in Western Europe or even in other parts of the world. The fintech industry is quite strong, and also, let's say, even the abilities of our let's say managers and workforce. It's we don't see ourselves as any portion worse than, let's say, the rest of the world in that case. So great to see that. We also see let's say the opportunities of being the hub of Europe, and let's say coming back to supply chain and logistics purely topics. This is also the perspective that I think is quite an opportunity for the next years and even decades for our region as well, and for the rest of the Europe too, hopefully. Okay, Jim. Thanks
Right on.
for your time, really, and I appreciate it. I hope that we are able to clear out some topics also to our listeners. Say you can find, let's say, our listeners can find you also on LinkedIn and other topics. I really encourage to buy at least let's say one of your books or even more. But this insightful leadership really was something that was very interesting for me, and I liked it a lot. So thanks a lot, Jim, and great to have you on our platform as a first English-speaking guest. So thanks again.
I'm glad we didn't do the podcast in Polish. I would be in trouble.
It's Polish is let's say no. You can say a lot, but Polish language is not so flexible. So it's let's try to work in English.
Hey, I have a hard time with English. Peter, thanks so much. It's been I can't believe we spent this. It went so quickly. The time. It was a pleasure talking with you today.
Thanks you, and thanks a lot to our listeners as well. And take care, guys.
Bye now.
Dziękuję, że byliście z nami. Jeżeli macie temat, o którym chcecie, abyśmy porozmawiali, to dajcie nam znać w komentarzu. Sprawdźcie także ofertę naszych sponsorów. Dla przypomnienia, partnerami dzisiejszego odcinka byli Magna Valley, firma doradcza oferująca usługi optymalizacji łańcucha dostaw i logistyki. Tworzymy rozwiązania redukujące koszty i efektywnie skalujące operacje. Budujemy wartość waszego biznesu. Europa Systems, producent i integrator automatyki dla logistyki i produkcji. Ponad 25 lat doświadczenia zdobytego w setkach projektów w 35 krajach. Do usłyszenia w kolejnym odcinku i pamiętajcie, aby subskrybować nasz kanał.